Well, in just about an hour, we are expecting an update from the White House on this ceasefire during a briefing by Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. NewsNation White House correspondent Libbey Dean is live in D.C. ahead of that update. So, Libbey, what exactly is Iran asking for and what might come next?
Day one of this two-week ceasefire, Nichole, and actually the Pakistani Prime Minister's statement that Robert was referencing there, it really just shows how fragile this agreement is, given the fact that Pakistan was actually the one who brokered the ceasefire agreement. But actually, moments ago, we just heard from the president on this. He just posted on Truth Social. He said numerous agreements, lists, and letters are being sent out by people that have absolutely nothing to do with the USA-Iran negotiation. In many cases, they are total fraudsters, charlatans, and worse. They will be rapidly exposed after our federal investigation is completed. The president talking here and goes on to say, these are the points that are the basis on which we agreed to a ceasefire. It is something that is reasonable and can be easily dispensed with. It's very much like fake news. Anyways, he goes on in this very lengthy post to talk about these differing agreements that we're seeing from each side here, because earlier in the day today, the president had actually said that Iran had agreed to many of the 15 points in this plan. One of those, of course, being that U.S. demand that we've heard from the beginning, which is no uranium enrichment. Additionally, we've heard the president say that the U.S. is talking tariff and sanction relief with Iran. But we also have this list of 10 points from the Iranians. And in this demand, you're seeing one of them be the ability to enrich uranium, which is basically a non-starter for the president. And also another point that you're looking at on your screen there that is likely a non-starter is Iran retaining control of the Strait of Hormuz, because as Robert was mentioning, that is a key piece of this deal, because reopening it is really a central condition of the ceasefire. And there are reports that those ships have already passed through, but that progress, it might not last, given Iranian state media was reporting Israel's continued strikes in Lebanon actually violate this ceasefire agreement. So that's going to be something to watch. And we've got this new statement from the president that we're going to read through about this ceasefire, and also the talks of these negotiations that are going to happen is in Islamabad on Friday. That's something the White House has not confirmed, but the president said that that could potentially happen in the days ahead, Nichole.
So, Libbey, the Secretary-General of NATO, we know, is in Washington today. What is the primary reason for that visit?
Well, if you read into it, Nichole, I mean, it's likely that the NATO Secretary-General is coming here to try and convince President Trump to not pull the U.S. out of NATO. Rutte has really been dubbed the Trump whisperer. That's what we've heard him called. So we'll see if he's able to convince the president of anything today, given this is what the president said on Monday.
NATO's a paper tiger. NATO is us. And when we needed them, we didn't need them, by the way. We didn't need them, obviously, because they haven't helped at all.
Now, divisions, of course, deepened between the United States and NATO allies after President Trump clashed with them over Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. He also criticized Europe for refusing to join in on those military operations in Iran and pushing them to secure their own oil supply. So that led to a lot of this tension that we're seeing. But it actually all stemmed from President Trump's desire to acquire Greenland. He himself has admitted that. And it's something that Rutte successfully de-escalated in Davos back in January after President Trump was threatening these tariffs on those NATO members who jumped in to defend Greenland, while President Trump was saying that he wanted to acquire it. Now, Rutte earlier today did meet with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He's going to meet with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Then he's going to be here at the White House to meet with President Trump at 3:30. Before that, Nichole, we are going to get this press briefing here at the White House. But I mean, this statement is going to be key ahead of this, where the president says the U.S. will be discussing these talks with Iran only behind closed doors during these negotiations. And he's basically criticizing these lists that are floating around between the Iranians and U.S. negotiators, Nichole.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.